Xin chào Việt CRE. Hôm nay mình mời được Vanna, người bạn để giới thiệu về commercial loan.
Cảm ơn chị. Xin chào các bạn. There's a lot of commercial loans. So there's property loans. There's two types of property loan, investor and owner user or owner occupied, which means your business is going to occupy the property. Construction loan, if you want to build ground up, if you want to modify, so nó kêu là tenant improvements, the modification to an existing property that your business is going to occupy, or you want to modify or remodel multifamily or investor property. There's equipment loan, so a lot of people need heavy machinery and equipment. There are land loans. Land loan is harder to get approved, but they do exist. And working capital loan. So if your business needs money to grow, like hire employees, you need to buy smaller equipment like laptops or whatever. There's working capital loans that can help you with that. And then there's lines of credit. So lines of credit is kind of revolving, open.
Does line of credit giống như là của residential không?
Lines of credit cho cái business họ khác nhau. Cái loan nó có là term loan với line of credit. So line of credit nói là mỗi năm á, mình renew lại. So business line nó cũng hơi khó một chút tại vì nó coi, nó monitor cái công ty của mình. And they ask for financials and tax returns and every year. So line of credit, đúng rồi, home equity line làm một lần thôi.
Làm 30 năm.
And you keep renewing it, đúng rồi. Business line of credit is even more different.
How long is the term usually?
Well, lines of credit usually is a 1-year term, but the bank, the bank chooses to renew you or not, right? On how good the business is doing.
Hôm nay mình muốn giới thiệu tổng quát chung hết, in general for all kinds of loans and what's the differences, để cho mọi người có một cái khái niệm về commercial loan là như thế nào thôi, cho nên là không có thể đi chi tiết được. Xin hỏi Vanna là cái process để get cái commercial loan là như thế nào và tại sao rất là khó, tại sao có rất là nhiều người bị turn away khi apply cái commercial loan?
Business banking sometimes is confusing, and small business banking, to be example. The world of finance is so big, right? Because sometimes there's like publicly traded, and we're not talking about that type of lending right now. We're really talking about lending for small business owners, so small to middle market companies. So the smaller companies, I think a lot of times they're not prepared for loans because when you go to the bank, your tax returns and your accounting has to look good. So I work with small business owners and sometimes I'm like, hey, I need a profit and loss. And they're like, what is that? When you go and ask somebody for money, they look at that very strongly.
So mình phải chuẩn bị những cái giấy tờ đó rất là rõ ràng và chi tiết trước khi mình đi mượn loan, để nhà bank họ có sẵn thì họ mới qualify mình được chứ. Nếu mình không có, và nếu mà thường là cái requirement cho business owner occupy là based on cái income của cái business đó rồi cái business plan, phải không? Còn cái investor loan là based on cái property mà cái generate cái NOI của cái property đó. Phải không?
Đúng rồi. So hồi trước em nói là cái loan nó là hai cái different process. So em giải thích là cái process cho owner user, meaning that I'm going to use the building for my business. The good thing about owner user is that they look at your business income, your personal income, and they add it all together. And also sometimes if you have other businesses that create income, so that's added together into what we call as the cash flow, right? Cái cash flow là quan trọng nhất. Mà nó dùng cái tax return cho calculate cái cash flow. So như trong cái tax return á, mình khai net loss, mình không có tiền á, they're not gonna give us the loan.
Gọi là move ahead, muốn leverage là mình phải chịu đóng thuế.
Đúng rồi.
Để mà mình có cái record là mình có tiền lời, tại vì nhà băng họ cho mình mượn tiền, họ giống như là partner của mình.
Đúng rồi.
Còn nếu mà những người không có kinh nghiệm hoặc chưa có làm business thì vẫn có thể qualify nếu có business plan, phải không Vanna?
Tùy theo. So startup business, cái loan, the risk of startup business is very high, right? So banking is based on risk level. So the higher the risk, and even the higher the interest rate. So I get a lot of questions about interest rate. What's my rate? Commercial is not like residential. You could just go online and, oh, today's 30-year fixed mortgage is XYZ. Commercial lending, the rate is predicated on a lot of different things. And it's not just necessarily, oh, I have good credit score. If you go to a commercial lender and you ask what's your debt to income, they know that you don't do commercial loans a lot because we don't even look at debt to income. We look at cash flow. Yeah, what is your cash flow? Your cash flow is your net income minus your expenses for the business. And then if you're buying real estate, we'll add back your rent expense because your loan payments is going to replace the rent expense. So sometimes people think they don't qualify for a loan, but they've been paying rent $7,000, $8,000, $10,000 a year for the last 10 years. And this whole time, they could have bought a loan, but they didn't know that, right? Because no one has helped them to sit down for like a couple periods of time and say, okay, this year, if you want to go buy a loan, we have to look at your taxes and see what you should expense and what you shouldn't expense.
Owner user đó, nếu mà họ không có qualify thì họ có thể co-sign được hay không?
Okay, so nếu mình không có qualify một mình, in the commercial world, they don't just say, okay, take a co-signer, but you can have a co-borrower. Maybe your brother, okay? So he has income, he could buy the property with you together, and we count his outside income as well. That's more of like a SBA thing for owner user.
It has to be a business partner. It cannot be a co-sign, giống như residential mình
not necessarily. He could be a business partner in the LLC that owns the real estate.
Yeah, the business owner, but don't have to be the operator.
Correct. He just has to basically be on the loan. Because in the residential world, right, in the resi world, you can co-sign and not be on the loan. I don't want to say in every single case because I've seen some commercial lenders be aggressive, but for the most part, for commercial lending, if I'm going to use your brother's income, for example, to help you qualify for the loan, I want to see your brother on the loan because I want him to take on the risks with you. That makes me, as your business partner, as a bank, feel more comfortable.
That's but down payment is okay.
Down payment, if you
gift,
yes. Yeah. So if you gift the down payment, it is okay for SBA loan.
And it doesn't have to be in the business or in the title.
Right, correct. He doesn't have to, but that means that you qualify by yourself. You're just short on the money, on the down payment. So he can give you the down payment. Yeah. Do you want to talk a little bit about conventional owner user loan? So there's SBA owner user, which we have a great YouTube about it, so go watch it if you haven't watched it already. But there's non-SBA owner user loan, which is conventional, the normal route. So what's different there is the down payment is higher, and the requirements for the cash flow is longer. So with SBA, it's only 1 year, whereas conventional lending, they want to see 2 to 3 years of good tax returns, good cash flow, and you have the down payment for it.
And is the down payment has to be more?
Yes, the down payment, instead of 10% down like SBA, it's anywhere between 25 or 35.
Okay.
Sometimes there were some years where we had some aggressive conventional lending that would do 15% down, but I think that's kind of few and far between. So it's mostly 25 to 35% down is what we see for conventional lending. And conventional lending, in terms of rates, rates are competitive. There's less fees. So SBA, lower down payments, but there are some SBA fees. So there's, like you guys probably mentioned in the video already, but
what's the fee usually?
Your loans fees are going to be, for the 7A loan, 2% of the loan. And that fee goes to the government. It's Sba Guarantee Fee. It's almost like when you use FHA and they make you pay all the insurances and all those FHA fees. SBA is the commercial version of FHA. That's a good way to think about that. It requires longer historical proof, but it's slightly less documentation, to be honest with you.
Okay.
And lower fees.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. And sometimes a lot of the lenders conventionally, because you're a stronger borrower and you most likely have a good relationship with that bank, they're willing to make pricing concessions for you. So you do kind of get more attractive rates. It depends on a deal. And It's just faster sometimes because the process is less documentation.
Okay.
SBA, a little bit more documentation, but easier to qualify for because you only need 1 year of tax returns, or good cash flow, I should say. 1 year and an interim period of good cash flow and less down payment.
Okay,
Yeah.
Let's talk about investment loan.
Yes.
For investor who never have experience,
Okay.
and how do they get qualified to get into the first building or the first property?
Great question. So investor property is solely based on the property NOI, or the property net operating income.
Yeah.
Because it makes sense, right? Because why would you as an investor buy a property that is not
That
making
lost,
money?
right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So the bank thinks that way. There's some situations where like you have a below market lease. You know, I have some lenders that will consider, hey, what would the market lease adjustment look like for this property? And then make you a loan based on the market lease, right?
Yeah.
But it just depends on the banks.
So what's the
So-
minimum they're looking at, like the cap rate they're looking at?
So the minimum debt service coverage ratio, which is the main lingo in commercial world, right? It's at least, it depends on the lender. Some lenders can go as low as 1.150, and I've seen some lenders want 1.45 times. So for every dollar of debt, you have $1.25 of net income to cover that. Okay. So whatever the property NOI is, there's a ratio that the banks want to see, depending on which bank you work with. And then the down payment for investor property, it ranges anywhere between 20% from some aggressive lenders to 35%. You know, and the lending, so banks, they make money off of two ways, right? Interest income and fee income. So maybe you have a lower down payment, but the bank's going to charge you a fee or a higher interest rate. At the end of the day, the bank's going to get their cut, right?
Yeah. The higher you qualify, the better rate you get, and the less down payment you get. But then for the inexperienced investor, it doesn't mean that's the end of the world, right? It means you can still get it, but you may have to pay a higher interest rate and put a bigger down payment, just to get your foot on the door, to get the credit, the experience, right? Then you can build that credit back or relationship with the bank
to get another property,
to build up your portfolio.
Yes.
So speaking of building a relationship with the bank, do you recommend investors or owners to have different relationships with different banks, or just go with one bank?
From the investor side, I mean, it's always good to have options, right? If you have a relationship with the bank, I think that's great. Having a good banking relationship is going to open doors for you. And then also working with loan brokers are good too, because investor loans are more transactional. There are banks that have investment lending institute or branches of their bank, and they work with experienced investors, and they want to have an ongoing relationship with you. That's a great relationship to have. But then for new investors, it is nice to have a loan broker, because they're doing the hard work for you.
Yeah, they shop around.
Yeah, they're shopping around for you. It takes a lot of time to find the right loan. And again, commercial is different from residential. You know, I think a lot of times I deal with people who are not experienced in commercial. They're always speaking in residential terms, like, what's my interest rate? I'm like, it depends. And then not only that, if you're buying property, the property conditions make an impact on the approval.
What the level?
So for example,
A or B or C.
Exactly.
How old the roof, and how's the condition of the property too.
Yes. Okay. And even an owner user, you know, if the zoning is not right, so you want to open a restaurant, which is like 90% of, no, I'm just kidding, which is a lot of people in our community, right? We like to open restaurants and food service, but let's say you buy a building, and the building, your business looks good, your tax returns are doing well, you have experience, but the issue is the property type. The property type is like a burnt down building, or it's a cold shell. This is the hardest type of lending for restaurants. Banks do not like lending on cold shell. yes, we'll give you construction money, but we want to see construction plans, permits. So you as Mrs. Buyer, you're already cutting checks to an architect to draw up drawings for a building you don't own yet, because that's what your lender wants. Yeah.
Mình explain sơ cho các bạn biết, cold shell có nghĩa là cái building nó chưa có gì hết. Có nghĩa là mình phải vô mình làm lại, làm từ đầu hết, chứ nghĩa là chỉ là một cái building nhưng mà chưa có cái gì phía trong hết.
Tại vì mình không có kiếm được cái building. Like, what are the chances of you finding a restaurant ready to go? But it's just so not to discourage anybody. It is possible. But you just have to be prepared as a buyer. Okay, I have to budget. If I really want this building for my restaurant, it's worth it, because retail rent is crazy. It's very expensive. So to replace your retail restaurant rent with a loan, in the long term, you're gonna save more money. But to get it done is that you have to have a good architect, a good construction, a good contractor, and be ready to present to the bank, okay, this is how much it's going to cost to build this building. And you have to execute that in whatever time frame the seller gives you. So if it's 60 days, if it's 90 days, or 120, if you can get it, great. But a lot of times the escrow is hard, right? It's at a very tight timeline.
What's the normal time for each
for SBA product,
for
or
SBA,
for
and what's for investment loan? Is that different?
Yes, it is different. I think investor loans are faster because you don't have to deal with a lot of the entity documentation. So, you know, investors 30 days or less, right? SBA, conventional owner user, 30 to 45 or 60 day. Sometimes it's just longer. It just depends on the deal and how, you know, the borrower. If
mình nói cho mấy bạn biết là trước khi mấy bạn muốn chuẩn bị đi mua một cái building hay là một cái business gì đó, thì mình nên chuẩn bị tất cả những cái giấy tờ từ tax return, personal financial statement, rồi cái business của mình là gì. Nếu mình muốn mở cái business đó thì phải có business plan, right? Rồi nếu mà là một cái entity thì phải có cái entity paperwork ready. Nói chung là những cái giấy tờ chuẩn bị sẵn sàng thì nó sẽ làm cho cái process nó lẹ hơn, nhanh hơn, smooth hơn. So thank you Vanna so much for giving us all this useful information today.